Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Ram Ram
Krishna Hare Hare Hare
Hare
Ram Ram.
Hare Hare Ram
Jai
Ram
Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu
Hare
Nityananda
Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare
Shri Krishna
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri
Chaitanya Prabhu
Advaita
Nityananda Shri
Gadadara
Advaita Gadadhar
Shri
Shri Gaura
Chaitanya Prabhu
Bhakta
Nityananda Sri
Jai Shri
Advaita
Krishna
Gadadara Shri
Chaitanya
Gaura Bhakta
Nityananda Shri
Jai Shri Krishna
Gaura
Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Shri Gaura Bhakta
Tulsi Radhe Guru Kananda Bhagwan Ki
Jai.
Haribo.
Haribo.
We're continuing with our study of these important verses 13, 8 through 12, and we'll chant them again, and then we'll pick up in the middle of the purport where we left off last week. No, we're not even in the middle yet. Okay.
Okay, so we'll start probably. Amaniyatvam bhitva Mahinsam Kshantirajarvam Acharyopasanam Shocham Isterya Atmam Vinigraha Indriyarteshu Vairagya Man Ahankare Euche Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Doshanudarshanam Asaktirana Bhishwangaha Putra Dara Grihadishu Nityam cha samchitatvam ishtanishtopapatishu Mayi chananya yogena bhaktiravya vicharini Vivitta desha sevitvam pratirjan sansadi Adhyatma jnana nityatvam tattva jnanartha darshanam Etad jnanamiti proktam Jnanam yadato anyatha. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth, all these I declare to be knowledge. And besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance.
I think we're starting with steadiness today. We covered humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, and cleanliness. So we start with steadiness today. Yeah, we did. We get all of this. Okay, steadiness. Steadiness means that one should be very determined to make progress in spiritual life. Without such determination, one cannot make tangible progress. And self-control means that one should not accept anything which is detrimental to the path of spiritual progress. One should become accustomed to this and reject anything which is against the path of spiritual progress. This is real renunciation. The senses are so strong that they are always anxious to have sense gratification. One should not cater to these demands which are not necessary. Okay, Rajani?
The senses should only be gratified to keep the body fit so that one can discharge his duty in advancing in spiritual life. The most important and uncontrollable sense is the tongue. If one can control the tongue, then there is every possibility of controlling the other senses. The function of the tongue is to taste and to vibrate. Therefore, by systematic cultivation, the tongue should always be engaged in tasting the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna.
That's it.
Madhav Prabhu.
As far as the eyes are concerned, they should not be allowed to see anything but the beautiful form of Krishna. That will control the eyes. Similarly, the ears should be engaged in hearing about Krishna and the nose in smelling the flowers offered to Krishna. This is the process of devotional service, and it is understood here that Bhagavad Gita is simply expounding the science of devotional service. Devotional service is the main and sole objective. Unintelligent commentators of the Bhagavad Gita try to divert the mind of the reader to other subjects, but there is no other subject in Bhagavad Gita than devotional service.
Are there any questions about this paragraph?
I think we have to also read the cleanliness, Prabhuji.
Oh, did we not read cleanliness? Well, let's go back and do cleanliness. I thought we had read
We
it.
did,
But we'll read cleanliness anyway, because this has the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in it.
but let's go and discuss it.
He wants to do it.
Yeah,
I'll just
well,
read it.
we're just saying that, that's a bit of a blanket statement that the Gita covers so many approaches to God. And this is taken, by people all over the world doing all kinds of things. I just think that there are commentaries by very intelligent people that say many insightful things about this, Peter. So I just wanted to put that out there, that this is a very sectarian statement that he's making.
Well, what happens here is Prabhupada uses the word unintelligent when he refers to people who aren't taking up bhakti, because Prabhupada called his Bhagavad Gita as it is, because as it is means that this is taken as directly without any other interpretation other than the understanding that Krishna is teaching devotion to him, which is the most direct understanding of the Gita. The other types of yoga presented in the Gita are there, and they're certainly not said to be wrong, but Krishna makes it clear in many places that actually bhakti is going to be the best path for us in this age. The last verse of the 6th chapter, yoginam api sarvesham madgatenan taratmana Shravan bhajate yomam same yuktatamon mataha. That yogi who is fixed in devotional service to me with no other, what? And all the yogis, of all the yogis, that yogi who is fixed in devotional service to me and has no other purpose than serving me, that person is considered to be the most advanced in yoga and the highest of all. So that's what Krishna says. And Arjuna also says that these other types of yoga are too hard for him to do. But the other yogas are there.
It still overstates the case that to say that there is no other subject than devotional service in the Gita. That's just not accurate.
There is no other subject in the sense that in the end, Krishna wants us to come to bhakti. The other yogas are there.
Yeah, they're all leading.
They're all leading to bhakti. There's nothing wrong with them,
They're subservient.
but we have to come to bhakti in the end. Okay, any other questions?
I agree, Prabhuji. I think ultimately it is bhakti. In the end, he states, you have to disband all other dharmas and just come to my shelter. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the final statement. That
Sarvadharma
unequivocally proves the point of Bhagavad Gita being none other than complete surrender to the Lord, which is the devotional service that is being referred to here.
That's the conclusion.
Also, yeah,
Also, there is a mention of uncontrollable tongue, and like if one controls their tongue, then all the senses can be controlled.
That's why we chant Sarira Vijaja Jitendra Eka before we take prasadam. And of all the senses, the tongue is the most voracious and difficult to control.
And the tongue is not just because we're having it to eat, but also speak. Because
Right.
it has the double function. So
Yes.
when we speak, we should be very mindful. In other words, Bhagavad Gita is teaching us sense control so that we can control the tongue to use it in the right way, which is speech and tasting whatever has been offered to the Supreme Lord. And speech is very important because we can use the tongue to criticize or condemn, or we can use the tongue to glorify the Supreme Lord and his devotees. So it's up to us to choose which way to go.
This is Vacho Vegam Manasa Krodha Vegam.
Exactly.
If we look at the beginning of this paragraph also, Prabhupada talks about, and self-control means that one should not accept anything which is detrimental to the path of spiritual progress. One should get accustomed to this and reject anything which is against the path of spiritual progress. And so this relates to Rupa Goswami, where he states that we should accept everything favorable to Krishna consciousness and reject everything unfavorable. The first two, that we do everything which will help us advance in Krishna consciousness, and those things which will take us away from Krishna consciousness, we reject them. We don't see them as being at all good for us. And that helps us control our senses. Anything else?
No.
Good discussion. Thank you.
One
I
more
have-
small note is that almost every animal, when it wants to express affection, will lick the object of affection. You know, the mother will lick the baby, and the dog will lick. I mean, it's just the tongue is how they express love. It's just amazing.
And the tongue is how we taste Krishna in prasadam. So yes, the tongue is a very powerful sense, and we also vibrate his name. Or actually, the name is vibrating on the tongue.
That's a very good point, Bill.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, are we going to go back to cleanliness? I think we did last week, but it's such a good little paragraph. We should do it again.
I have one pastime to share. I heard in one of Maharaj lecture, I don't remember who was the speaker, but they were telling that until Nrsimhadev appeared, Lord came as some form of animal, and then after at that time he first time licked Prahlad Maharaj, and then after he came as a son of parents. Like then he understood the how the love of parents. So after that he came as a son of someone like Dashrath Maharaj and Nanda Maharaj, like that.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, just want to share that.
But yeah, but it is true that Nrsimhadev showed affection to Prahlad by licking him.
Yeah.
So we can do cleanliness.
Yeah, you did. Okay. Sejal Mataji, पढ़ेंगे?
So, cleanliness is essential for making advancement in spiritual life. There are two kinds of cleanliness, external and internal. External cleanliness means taking a bath, but for internal cleanliness, one has to think of Krishna always and chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This process cleans the accumulated dust of past karma from the mind.
So what could be better than a paragraph that has a whole mantra in it?
Yeah. Mhm.
So I guess we can go down to
And also one more point about the previous paragraph we read is that control of the senses means that we need to be intelligent enough not to allow us ourselves to be victimized by the pullings of the senses that are taking us in 1,000 different directions.
Sonali?
False ego means accepting this body as oneself. When one understands that he is not his body and his spirit soul, he comes to his real ego. Ego is there, false ego is condemned, but not real ego. In the Vedic literature, Brihadrangya Upanishad 1.4.10, it is said, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, I am spirit. This I am, the sense of self, also exists in the liberated stage of self-realization. This sense of I am is ego, but when the sense of I am is applied to this false body, it is false ego. When the sense of self is applied to reality, that is real ego. There are some philosophers who say we should give up our ego, but we cannot give up our ego because ego means identity. We ought, of course, to give up the false identification with the body.
Does anybody have a comment about the false ego?
Anything in relation to them too.
Yeah. Only thing is, even in the Aham Brahmasmi, Prabhuji, I am
Pardon me?
Brahman.
I am Brahman.
Yeah,
That's
Brahman, but so that's real ego, but then that also needs to be surrendered to Lord Krishna, isn't it?
Well, ultimately, we have to be das, anudas, anudas. I mean, the servant of the servant of the servant. And our real constitutional position is to be a soul surrendered to Krishna. And so I am Brahman. If one doesn't have, it's incomplete in the sense that we have to fill out the I am. I am, and then there has to be an object here. And that's not an object because it's a verbal being.
Pure spirit.
Yeah, so we have I am, and then the blank has to be filled in. If I am nothing, that's still short. Because if we're in the Brahma Jyoti, we don't have a real identity. But I am a servant of Krishna, that's our real position.
That's knowledge.
And the word ego, I mean, of course, it comes from the Latin ego, which means I. So, this is the identity of we are what we are. But if we think I am and we put in businessman, man, woman, then that's false ego. Ahankara. That I, me, mine. I everything's from I am concerned with what's mine. I'm the doer. That's false ego. Okay.
Okay.
One should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, old age, and disease. There are descriptions in the various Vedic literatures of birth. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the world of the unborn, the child's stay in the womb of the mother, its suffering, etc., are all very graphically described. It should be thoroughly that birth is distressful. Because we forgot how much distress we have suffered within the womb of the mother, we do not make any solution to the repetition of birth and death. Hare Krishna.
Bill?
Bill?
Oh, okay. Similarly, at the time of death, there are all kinds of sufferings, and they are also mentioned in the authoritative scriptures. These should be discussed. And as far as disease and old age are concerned, everyone gets practical experience. No one wants to be diseased and no one wants to become old. There is no avoiding these, unless we have a pessimistic view of this material life, considering the stresses of birth, death, old age, and disease. There is no impetus for our making advancement in spiritual life.
we were just reading about the fact that there are, in the material world, there are two classes of jivas. They're both conditioned, but one class of the jivas understands that the material world is a place of suffering, and therefore they're very eager to try to find a solution to the suffering of this material world. And the other class has no clue. So they just simply go on trying to enjoy whatever's there to the best of their ability. And of course, this material enjoyment is far in a way inferior to the enjoyment that the soul has in relationship to Krishna, because it's temporary and it's really not even enjoyment, in the sense that there's so much suffering in the whole process of supposedly attaining enjoyment. So it's important for us to know that this material world isn't a great place to hang out. Any other questions or comments? We can go on to the next verse.
This is precisely what got the Gautama going into the direction of becoming the Buddha.
Yes.
Yeah.
His
And
father did his best to shield him from everything until he got out of the palace and saw that there was death, saw there was suffering, saw there was disease. Yes.
And at the same time, Prabhuji, the human body is the only vehicle that will allow us to escape from this endless cycle of birth and death. So certainly it is not the true existence, but there is still our good fortune to have this human birth. So we can.
Yeah, I teach a philosophy class with the kids, the teenagers here, and today we were talking, we read some philosophers, and we read Srila Prabhupada's commentary on the philosophers. And we were reading about some of the philosophy of this early Christian mystic named Origen. And one of the points we were making was Origen talked about, and Prabhupada heartily agreed with this, that the human life is absolutely a gift from God, and is the most valuable. It's so valuable because we can realize him. And I actually mentioned to the kids, I said, so the human life's the best, but there's two, you can look at the demigods, for instance, and they actually cannot become truly Krishna conscious as easily as a human can. And I said, well, what's the reason? And they quite nicely said, well, because there's so much enjoyment there that they can't simply give it up, and they want to stay and enjoy that. And then, of course, if you look at the animals, they're in ignorance. No dog ever wonders why he's here.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. Thank you, Parag.
Okay, Parag?
As for detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should have no feeling for these. They are natural objects of affection. But when they are not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. The best process for making the home pleasant is Krishna consciousness. If one is in full Krishna consciousness, he can make his home very happy, because this process of Krishna consciousness is very easy. One need only chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna. Have some discussion on books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and engage oneself in deity worship. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Dinesh Prabhu?
These four things will make one happy. One should train the members of his family in this way. The family members can sit down morning and evening and chant together Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If one can mold his family life in this way, to develop Krishna consciousness following these 4 principles, then there is no need to change from family life to renounced life. But if it is not congenial or favorable for spiritual advancement, then family life should be abandoned. One must sacrifice everything to realize or serve Krishna, just as Arjuna did. Arjuna did not want to kill his family member, but when he understood that these family members are impediments of his Krishna realization, he accepted the instruction of Krishna and fought and killed them. In all cases, one should be detached from the happiness and distress of family life because because in this world one can never be fully happy or fully miserable.
You can't even be fully miserable in the material world, as Prabhupada said. Nothing. One time Prabhupada, someone came to Prabhupada, one of his disciples said, "Oh, Prabhupada, I'm the most fallen." And he said, "You're not the most anything." Actually, you know, we sometimes think this way. But there's a nice part in the center of this verse, of this paragraph, which there's a term which called udipana, which means stimulation to remember Krishna. And Prabhupada's giving a nice formula here for to stimulate our Krishna consciousness. In our family life, we simply have to, as a family, chant Hare Krishna, accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna, and then discuss Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and engage oneself in some deity worship. If we do these things, we have like an altar in our house, and we have cook nice preparations and offer them, and we listen to bhajans and chant Hare Krishna. Then our life, our house becomes a place where we're getting reinforcement for serving Krishna at every moment. And then we can go out in the world and do whatever we have to do. But we have this wonderful kind of launch pad at home that's launching us to Krishna. Any reflections or thoughts on this paragraph? We're doing quite well. We're actually moving to these paragraphs well.
Sometimes when he keeps repeating the Maha Mantra, it's almost like he's getting paid by the word.
Well, no, actually what he's doing, he's trying to trick everybody. If you read teachings of Lord, if you read teachings of Lord Chaitanya, throughout the book, he's putting the Maha Mantra in every paragraph, sometimes 3 times in the paragraph. Because he figures if you read the book and you end up chanting the Maha Mantra, you make advancement. So Prabhupada will always plug in the Maha Mantra wherever he can, in order that we can hear that vibration as often as we can.
And by the way, the book is free actually.
The book is free.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the book now is free because you can just get it online. But we still sell them because we want the people to engage in Krishna consciousness. Because when somebody gives some money for the book and likes the book, then that actually is a beginning of devotional service. It is what's called agyata sukriti. It's unknowing pious activity. Merits.
Can you hear me, Prabhuji?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear. I think my video just went off, but that's okay. So, I was just saying, so, and, we can also pay now online as well, since this is the Kartik month. And we are using vedabase.com, continuously for a few years now. I'll just request, just go to vedabase.com, vedabase.com, and then there's a donate button underneath, and we can donate.
Yeah, everybody pitch in even a few dollars, it helps.
Yeah. So, and you're able to see my screen too, yeah?
I can see your screen. Can everybody else?
We can see you also, Prabhuji.
We can also see you.
Prabhuji, we can see you.
Oh, okay. I think my screen is frozen, maybe. That's okay. At least as long as...
Everything's working fine on mine.
Okay. So we'll continue reading then.
Yes, we'll continue reading.
Yeah, Sejal Mataji.
Yeah. Happiness and distress are concomitant factors of material life. One should learn to tolerate as advised in Bhagavad Gita. One can never restrict the coming and going of happiness and distress. So one should be detached from the materialistic way of life and be automatically equipoised in both cases. Generally, when we get something desirable, we are very happy. And when we get something undesirable, we are distressed. But if we are actually in the spiritual position, these things will not agitate us. To reach that stage, we have to practice unbreakable devotional service. Devotional service to Krishna without deviation means engaging oneself in the 9 processes of devotional service. That is, chanting, hearing, worshipping, offering respect, etc. As described in the last verse of the 9th chapter, that process should be followed. Hare Krishna.
Haribo. Krishna says in the 2nd chapter, in the 14th verse, he says, Matra sparsas tikauntaya, shatoshna sukadukada, agama pino nityas, tamsatikshas vabharata, which is, O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O Sai and Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So, I mean, this is an important element in spiritual life that we have to be able to simply realize that everything comes and goes. And it's not, somebody said Zoom is not working. It's working for me. Everybody else there?
Oh,
Oh. Okay.
Sorry.
So that's an important point, that we have to learn to tolerate happiness and distress. And the best way to tolerate that is to become advanced in consciousness. And Prabhupada's giving us all these different ways to become advanced in consciousness, including hearing, chanting, remembering, offering respect, surrendering to Krishna, becoming Krishna's friend. I mean, these are all in the 7th canto well, they're in the seventh canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and in the 9th chapter also of the Bhagavad Gita refers to this.
there's an aspect I want to bring up. That is that you can't make a carrot grow faster by pulling on it. I mean, I want to be a saint. I want to be clean. I want to be very high being. But there's things in the way that fall away at the rate that they fall away. And so really, I can arrange my life in such a way that there's a regular practice like this, but these things, they fall away as they fall away. And I'm trying to accelerate my own progress can result in really unintended negative consequences. So that kind of has to factor into our practice here.
That's why we have to practice bhakti, because bhakti, we don't really push ourselves in a way that we're going to hurt ourselves. And we depend on the mercy of Krishna. It's the best example, a good example that we've all heard is the story of Draupadi when she was dragged into the assembly of the Kurus, and they were trying to strip her naked, and she was trying to fight them, but she couldn't fight them. They were big, by holding onto her sari and trying to protect herself. But there's no protection there because she couldn't fight Dushasana, who was a big, strong warrior. So finally, she just said, "Hey, Krishna," and surrender to Krishna. I mean, this is also a concept in Christianity too, that at some point we have to realize we can't do it, but only Krishna can help us. And so therefore, what we do is we try to do something to always remember Krishna and be grateful to Krishna and feel positive about our relationship with him. And then that way, these bad things will gradually drop off as Krishna helps us. Otherwise, it's very frustrating. Yep, chanting.
Prabhu, as it is mentioned that we are bound by these 3 modes of material nature, so it will always come around us and then bother us. Sometimes sattva is over. So it will keep on coming and going like, but yeah, like you said, only Krishna's mercy can help us. So we have to just tolerate them.
And also depend totally upon the chanting of the holy name, because that's Krishna himself.
Yes.
And if we read the Bhagavatam, if we read so many books, the glories of the holy name are endless. And that's a process that is easy for us to follow, to chant, to repeat the holy name of the Lord in a very prayerful mood. Not with indifference, but with attention and devotion.
Prabhupada said we should chant Hare Krishna like a child cries for his mother. Yes. So these are, we're never going to get out of the pushings and pullings of the senses in this world. We're stuck with the senses because we're here, but we can help become less entangled, victimized by them by trying to become more and more Krishna conscious. I think we have time for one more paragraph, and then we'll have to stop.
Mukesh?
Naturally, when one is adapted to the spiritual way of life, he will not want to mix with materialistic men. That would go against his grain. One may test himself by seeing how far he to live in a place, unwanted association. Naturally, a devotee has no taste for unnecessary sporting or cinema going or enjoying some social function, because he understands that these are simply a waste of time. There are many research scholars and philosophers who study sex life or some other subject, but according to Bhagavad Gita, such research work and philosophical have no value. That is more or less nonsensical. According to Bhagavad Gita, one should make research by philosophical discussion into the nature of the soul. One should make research to understand the self. That is recommended here. Hare Krishna.
So why is it that all these other studies that people do and they get very absorbed in them, it's a waste of time? How is it a waste of time? Like these studies into...
Because you are doing a study about something which is temporary.
Temporary material.
Yeah.
I think all of this has to do with our choices. We can choose to devote our energy and time to something that is temporary, that gives us some temporary results, which are binding, by the way, or we can use our energy and abilities and capacities to engage them in spiritual pursuits, which is permanent. And then when we get to be to a certain age, then we realize the futility of all the other things and how important it is for us to be in the right consciousness as we are approaching the moment of leaving the body. Because that's what really matters, ultimately.
However, that age could be any time.
Yeah, that's true.
But,
and Prabhuji, life is about engaging in the desirable activities. And for us, desirable activities is to go to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So therefore, any undesirable activities, we should try not to engage in. Not to say that these things are important or not. I think it's as you said, once we reach certain spiritual maturity, we realize that those things are not valuable to us. The desirable activity is to go towards Lord Krishna and Krishna consciousness, and therefore we should engage in those activities.
However,
I think that's very important.
There is, let's remember this principle called Yukta Vairagya, where everything can be used in the service of the Lord. So we use our phones, we use our cars, we use our stoves for cooking. We'll go into the, new discoveries, scientific discoveries, etc. And all of that can be used and needs to be used in the service of Krishna. And that way, those things become valuable.
I, as a person who's done research his whole life, I take exception to this paragraph, especially, I don't see anything in the Gita that says research is a bad idea. Besides which, there's a lot of people who have pathologies in their sex lives. They have to work things out. They have to know this research in sexual research is very important, very helpful thing. When Kenzie did his research, for example, it's much better to have a clear idea of what's going on.
I think, Bill, what we're trying to say here, what he's trying to say is that in the pursuit of our ultimate good, which is to serve God, these things are side issues. They're like detours. Certainly, someone can be a geologist or a psychologist or a doctor or whatever and still be a devotee, and they can do their work. But to say that the only thing in my life is to study, how the Romans plumbing systems work, there's an article about that now, but and I did read it too, so I was probably wasting my time there, but but the fact is that Prabhupada's trying to speak essential truth here, which is if you were in your last seconds of life, you're in a, I can even put it like this: you're falling out, you're falling out of a parachute, and your parachute doesn't open, and on the side it says, call our helpline, to find out how to fix this parachute. Then
I wish somebody had done research in aeronautics.
But the point is, on the other hand, if someone says turn it over and pull it, just do that and pull the reserve parachute. The point is that Prabhupada is saying this is essential knowledge for us to go to our eternal relationship with Krishna. And these other things, they're like a circus side. They're like in a circus, there's a three-ring circus, but they're the side shows.
And actually, this relationship with Krishna is what really allows us to become totally self-realized. If we're talking about the process of self-realization, to realize who we are and to realize what our function is and what our goal is, that's the most important thing. And that is realize our connection to the Supreme Lord in a mood of total love, absolute love.
Lively, thank you for all the input tonight. It's good. And next week is the day after Thanksgiving. We'll be around, so if everybody else is, it'd be nice to do it again, as long as we have enough of us coming.
Yeah, I'd like to do it.
Okay, great.
I just wanted to make one comment, and when it comes to research, actually, there is always some hypothesis, some methodologies developed. Actually, same thing what Prabhupada talks about when he talks about Sravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, all these various processes, these are scientific. Prabhupada talks about scientifics, nothing to do with religion. These are the methods, methodology, scientific process to realize the truth. And scientists do the same thing. So there is no contradiction. That's how Prabhupada talks about that. So there's no contradiction I see. In fact, when he established Bhaktivedanta Institute, his goal was that some scientific methods people are trained into, and they should use ultimately this knowledge, the knowledge they have gathered over many, many years to ultimately prove what is the ultimate truth. Ultimate research is everybody's looking towards that goal, ultimate truth. And that's what Prabhupada talks about. So I don't see where is a contradiction in scientific methods, what generally scientists do, or what Prabhupada describing those various processes, ultimately methods to reach the absolute truth, which is everybody is looking for. What scientists, physicists, chemists, what they are looking for, that the truth. But they go as far as a relative truth. And our absolute truth is beyond that. And he talks about what is the process to get to know the absolute truth.
Thank you, Madhava. We hadn't heard you all night, and I was almost going to ask you if you had a comment. And thank you for your comment. It was great.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol.
So next Friday, is everyone available or
Yeah, we're available.
raise your hands who is available?
I think
We will be out.
Some can't see their hands, but
Yes, we're available, yes.
Okay, we only few
Yeah,
people.
yeah, we are not sure 100%.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I'll
but-
send out a survey. I will decide.
okay.
Yeah. So, and now this is almost final week of Kartik month. So we are going to hear.
Kartik done.
Kartik
Project is over already.
it ended yesterday.
Yesterday,
Yeah.
right? But
Yes.
for us, because we meet only Fridays, I think
Okay. I'll count it as Kartik
Yes,
plus.
for us, it ends this evening.
yeah. So we'll hear Damodar Ashtakam one more time.
Yes,
No,
yes.
that's always nice.
Yeah.
Kartik.
Hare Krishna, and everyone enjoy the Thanksgiving weekend. And then we'll see.
Thank you.
Namamishwaram Sachidanandarupam Lasatkunalam Gokule Prajamanam Namamishwaram Sachidanandarupam Lasatkunalam Gokule Prajamanam Yashodabiyolokalatabhamana Param Vrishtamadyantato Vritakopya Yashodabiyolokalatabhamana Param Vrishtamadyantato Vritakopya Rudantam Purnetrajantam Param Bhajayamya Satanganetam Rudantam Purnetrajantam Param Bhajayamya Satanganetam Muhushvasakam Parthirikakutanta Tita Braivam Dhamam Bhaktibhata Muhushvasakam Parthirikakutanta Tita Braivam Dhamam Bhaktibhata Puna Varam Mokshamadiva Nachanam Vrinihamarishnadapiva Idam Teva Purnamapalagala Sadhane Marasyavirashmadimanye Idam Vedante Mukhamboja Matyantanile Vritam Hare Krishna
Damodar ki jai.
Shri Shri Radha Damodar ki jai. Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Kartik
On,
Mann ki jai.
Kartik ki jai. And there's a big festival at the temple this Sunday. There's a Tulsi Vivaha. They're going to do a fire yajna, a homa, and so everybody's invited. It starts at 4 on Sunday afternoon.
Tomorrow you had something 6:30 kirtan.
At our house, not our house, at the temple. Instead of doing a Harinam, because it's going to be
The
cold,
street, yeah.
we're going to have from 6:30 to 7:30 or maybe 8. We'll just do some kirtan in the
And
temple
bhajans.
and bhajan. So anybody wants to come, bring your instruments and we can have a good time.
All right. Enjoy Thanksgiving week.
Hare Krishna.
Have a good week. And we'll see you next week.
Hare Krishna.
After the
Hare
holiday.
Krishna.
Hare Hare Bo, all glory to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Haribo.